And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. And yes, we are live right now on X as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, actually.
Oh, we're not sure about that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Oh, so we got through 3 days, and then technological differences have hit.
That's our brand.
How are you? Yeah, I posted it.
We told everybody
we
told everybody we're the guinea pig. All right. So it looks like the rest of Blaze's shows won't be starting on Twitter tomorrow. First, they're going to use us to figure out what's going wrong, and then you'll see everybody else later once they have it all figured out. All right. But hey, we love being first into the battle here on the show. That's kind of where we're the most comfortable anyway. We of course are brought to you by our good friends as well over at Relief Factor. If you're suffering from chronic pain and you're thinking this will just be my lot in life, there's nothing I'll ever do to get past it. That may be true. I mean, we all die. I mean, you know, our bodies, this physical body doesn't live forever, and we are in a fallen creation. But it may not necessarily be true. It could be that you have relief just, 1 3-week quick start away from our friends at Relief Factor. Now, no guarantees, but over the last 20 plus years, over 1 million people have taken Relief Factor. And 70% of them have ended up sticking around after the 3-week quick start because of the results they saw in 3 weeks or less. If you want to put them to the test, go to relieffactor.com. It's a drug-free supplement created by physicians who can prescribe drugs, but they wanted to come up with something drug-free that would go after the inflammation likely causing your chronic pain. And that something is Relief Factor. See if you might not be their next success story. Easy for me to say. It's only $20. What do you got to lose to see if you don't see a difference in 3 weeks or less when you go to relieffactor.com. Again, that's relieffactor.com. All right. Coming up on today's show, next hour, we are going to do, we're going to do the book of Romans, but apply it to what is happening right now. And if you look at how we did the introduction to Romans, we pointed out this was really the first, I guess we'll say, pardon the expression, coalition within the Christian church. The first wide, diverse congregation mixing both Jews and Gentiles. So you had some people who saw Yeshua of Nazareth as the fulfillment of the faith, and they're still probably keeping the festivals and going to temple on the Passover, and because they think Jesus is the ultimate lamb, right? Okay, they're still going to the festival of dedication, or Hanukkah, because in the Gospels Jesus went to the festival of dedication of the temple and Hanukkah, right? So they're still living a largely Jewish lifestyle, but they just believe Yeshua is Messiah. Then you've got these uncircumcised people called Gentiles that don't know about any of that. They weren't called to any of that. That's not their heritage. That's not their legacy, but they have this shared faith. They're not living any of those things, and they have to learn to live together, right, as believers. And then they have to learn to live together. Keep in mind, up until this point in history, when Jesus says we're fulfilling the prophet Isaiah, that my house would be a house of prayer for all nations, right? Up until that point in time, the Jews were called to be set apart from the Gentile world. Okay. But now that we're in the Messianic era, it is now time to take this message to the masses. So there wasn't like a handbook. Oh, hey, back in the day, we have tradition like you guys, like we have now. So back in the day, they did this. No, they were terraforming this in real time. Jews and Gentiles had never lived together like this in mass quantities in co-religious observance. I mean, they had like in places like Alexandria or when the Jews were in captivity, but not in co-religious observance, where one group is probably still living a Jewish lifestyle and another is not while worshiping the same Lord. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So they had to navigate that, and then they had to figure out how to do that while the central authority of the spirit of the age is trying to end them both at the exact same time. And that's essentially the backdrop of the book of Romans. We are living through a moment in the book of Romans right now. And it involves what's happening at the GOP convention, what the questions people have, the confusion that's out there, what's in the platform, what's not, what's being said at the podium, what's not. We are going to do our very best next hour to emulate the Apostle Paul. He says, Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. I'm going to do my best, so pray for me. All right. I'm going to try to put, I need apostles, not assassins to the ultimate test next hour. I'm going to try to follow Paul's lead and try to help us to see how we got here to this moment, what this moment is, and then where we need to go in the future. Did I say I am an apostle, capital A, with a definitive message for everyone to follow after me. Is that what I said?
I'll be the judge of that.
That is not what I said. Okay? So, by all means, when I get done with this next hour, be a good Berean and test the word and what I said up against it for yourself. Okay? Be a good Berean and do that. All right? But we're in this is a sticky wicket, George. All right, that's what the uncle says when they've lost the money at the savings and loan, okay, and they're all going to prison. This is a sticky wicket, George. Indeed, we're in a sticky wicket here. All right, and so I'm going to do my best, by God's grace, with my own limitations, of course, to try to help us because we first need to understand, how did we get here, so that we can then figure out what's the way forward in light of where we are. Okay, so we're going to put the book of Romans to a very real world applicable test coming up next hour of the show. You guys ready for that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. At the bottom of this hour, Aaron Baer is going to join us. He's from the Ohio Center for Christian Virtue, who has given a sterling endorsement of J.D. Vance, who accepted formally the nomination for Vice President of the United States last night at the convention. We'll talk to him about that and also about J.D.'s recent comments on, I can't remember which of the Sunday depressing shows. Was it Meet the Depressed, Deface the Nation? Rush's nicknames for those shows. Even to this day, it's been how many years later, I cannot say them out loud without giggling. All right. I don't know which of those it was. Okay, they're all those shows broadcast alike. I can't tell the difference. Okay, but he was on one of them a couple weeks ago, making some really unfortunate comments on the life issue, because pretty much what he has said, and since then, and everything I've said, I've seen him that's been presented to me that was supposed to make me hate the guy that he said before that. I got to be honest. I'm kind of like, true dat, word. True dat, bet. That's kind of my reaction to and then there's like this comment in the middle, hey, we should give people the abortion drug. I'm like, what you talking about, Willis? Right? That's where I'm at with that. Okay, so I'm at what you talking about, Willis, with that. But on the everything else, I'm like, preach. Okay, so I'm going to try to get to the bottom of some of this with Aaron Baer coming up at the bottom of this hour. But before we get to all of that, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Night 3 of the RNC, which featured a bevy of speakers, including one of Donald Trump's grandchildren, a World War II veteran, and vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, who talked about what America actually is.
One of the things that you hear people say sometimes is that America is an idea. And to be clear, America was indeed founded on brilliant ideas like the rule of law and religious liberty, things written into the fabric of our Constitution and our nation. But America is not just an idea. It is a group of people with a shared history and a common future. It is, in short, a nation. Now, it is part of that tradition, of course, that we welcome newcomers. But when we allow newcomers into our American family, we allow them on our terms. That's the way we preserve the continuity of this project from 250 years past to hopefully 250 years in the future.
Vance also had his mother in attendance.
And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here. 10 years, clean and sober. I love you, Mom.
Meanwhile, over in Democrat land, Joe Biden had to cancel a key event after he tested positive for COVID. Yes, the year is 2024, and they're still doing COVID tests. The Biden X account posted the simple message, "I'm sick." In response, here's what CNN is saying about the state of the Democratic Party.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden. You've got the nominees of this party getting their butts kissed. Biden's getting his butt kicked by his own party. The Democrats are coming apart. The Republicans are coming together.
Yesterday, as we mentioned in passing, Congressman and California Senate candidate Adam Schiff overtly called on Joe Biden to step aside in his re-election bid. Joe Biden, your thoughts?
So I had some medical condition that emerged. If the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided.
Axios reported this morning that a decision to drop out of the race for re-election on Biden's part could come by this weekend. The more we know, the more we don't update. Here's a brief roundup of some of the news about the would-be assassin of Donald Trump from this week. Thomas Matthew Crooks visited the site of the rally the day before the event, according to NBC. He was photographed 62 minutes before the shooting. Secret Service counter-snipers spotted him 20 minutes before the attack. And according to NBC as well, cell phone of Thomas Matthew Crooks depicted a live stream of the rally. Still no concrete motive yet. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you ex-Congressman Madison Cawthorn exiting the RNC. And that's what happened while we were away.
Oh my goodness. Hate the game, not the player, I guess, man. I don't even know what. I don't know what. Hold on.
He's not
Warn
married.
me next time, please.
I don't know what to do with that. Like, he's not married. He's
Aaron's
divorced.
montage brought to you by our friends at My Patriot Supply. If you need an extra emergency supply of composure, as I do right this minute, but maybe what you actually need is an extra supply of emergency food, just in case that could never happen here. Happens here again. Make sure you get it from the most trusted name in survival. Go to preparewithdace.com and get the 3-month emergency food kit from our friends at My Patriot Supply. That's breakfast, lunch, dinner, even snacks and drinks, the full 2,000 plus calories that you need every day right there for you, that lasts up to 25 years in heavy-duty packaging with the right and proper storage on your end. Over a dozen combinations of meals inside, so while the world is ending, you at least won't be bored. Yeah, your taste buds won't be. I mean, you'll be fighting for your life, but your taste buds will at least have some, I guess we'll call it diversity. Anyway, make sure you've got that peace of mind to know that you are ready. You can save $200 on their best-selling 3-month emergency food kit now, and free shipping is included as well at preparewithdace.com. That is preparewithdace.com. 3 quick thoughts on what Aaron mentioned in his montage. Let's take these kind of bullet, if we, at least as much as we are able to do this, in terms of bullet points on this program with our long-windedness, and I'm really talking about me when I say that. Let's start with the with J.D. Vance said last night. I'm going to tell you right now, if he is serious, if that one soundbite that he said right there. There's a reason why Democrats say America is an idea, because that means it's not a nation. That's what it means. I told you guys before about there's a few things I remember listening to growing up on conservative talk radio that have stuck with me for many, many years. And one day I'm driving around, I'm listening to Mark Levin say, it's the first time I'd ever heard anybody say this. And I heard Mark Levin, it's kind of weird because I work with him now. I heard Mark Levin say, we're not a nation of immigrants, we're a nation of citizens, right? I've mentioned that one before. And I just froze in my car. I'm like, whoa, mind blown. Okay, because that is a paradigm shifting news, gentlemen, is what that is when you understand that. That people that did come here as immigrants did not come here to just take the world they left with them here. They brought some of their customs and cultures. That was the melting pot, right? But they ultimately came here because they wanted to be American citizens. They wanted to be Americans. That's what a melting pot is. We bring some of our customs, some of our culture, but ultimately we melt into one, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And JD is channeling that right now, right there in what Aaron just shared. I cannot tell you even if he believes nothing else about any of our issues at all, nothing. If he sincerely believes that, your analogy the other day that Trump represents in New York, that we grew up with in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, that we didn't vote the way we did. We were fine. Our kids going to college there, vacation there. I used to say pre-COVID, New York City on this show. New York City is one of my favorite places. Pre-COVID, New York City was one of my favorite places in the world. I loved it. I love New York. I mean, whenever I got a chance to go there, I took advantage of it to go and see the sights and everything else. Love New York. Took my wife there with me on an anniversary trip once.
When 9/11 happened, they were us and we were them.
Yes.
I mean, that's that country. It isn't now.
No, it was way more liberal than me. Not voting the same way that I did, but it was America nevertheless. Okay? And that's kind of what he is channeling there. That even if that's the only thing that he truly now, I'm told from friends of mine at Claremont, and they're about the last deep thinkers on the right we have left, frankly, they love this guy. Okay, I'm told that this guy is really good. We'll see. I hope so. But even if just that one thing he is sincere about, and this administration, if it gets back in power, is sincere about, the difference that would make in the overall American landscape is paradigm shifting. It just would, the toxicity level would go down. I mean, everything would radically shift to closer to what we remembered when we were growing up. And Aaron never remembers at all as a millennial because he didn't live through that at all. But where we, like you've told stories before, sitting in the student union at UW-Madison, very left-wing school, and you guys are out there arguing bitterly about issues, and then everybody's going out for a beer and rooting the Badgers on at the ball game afterwards, right?
Exactly.
Same thing in your families, okay? But Christmas didn't get canceled and Thanksgiving wasn't ruined, okay? If anything, you look forward to those debates because it livened things up, all right? It would go so far into rolling back the clock from the doomsday that we're, ticking very closely to right now. So I wanted to address that about that particular notion right there, that we're not an idea, we're a nation, is similar to, we're not a nation of immigrants, we're a nation of citizens. Thoughts?
Well, you know what I think about. I mean, my goodness, the citizenship has been my jam for so long, and to put a finer point on it, because I know Steve has many times pointed out, along with Cleon Skousen, this is the only nation founded on a creed. So
Cleon Skousen wrote the book, The 5,000-Year Leap. We've done it as a book study on the show 3 times. Highly would recommend it, yes.
So it's not to say that there's no ideals. In fact, they're the most important ideas of all. But what we're really talking about is Benjamin Franklin. What did you create? A republic. That's the idea. If you can keep it. And that, I think, is what the vice president that Trump has chosen for himself is trying to get at. It's not ethereal. Every generation has to manifest it again and again and again. A charge you must keep.
Yeah, this is something that even in passing, this is kind of like you can't legislate morality. This is kind of an easy mistake to make because, yes, America was founded on a creed, and what is a creed? It's a set of stated principles, ideas. You can say that in kind of one sense. But it very easily goes to the place where America is just this kind of amorphous thing.
Nebulous blob.
Yeah. We've had these conversations. We had these conversations 7 years ago, 8 years ago about the addiction to the nostalgia of America, the accoutrements, kind of the things that used to be, this addiction to the past. And that's another ditch that you can fall into. But I think more than ever right now, what J.D. Vance said has to be reinforced. No, we are a real concrete country. We're not just an idea. We're not just a tax zone. We're not just an economic zone. We're not just a bunch of tax bots. We are a real flesh and blood concrete country that deserves and needs to be protected for posterity. That has to be reinforced because right now, I remember watching, it was probably sometime last year, this Man on Street interviewing, I think, Gen Zers and maybe younger millennials, asking them what the capital of the United States is. And it was just like, is it Los Angeles? That's how far, basically akin to how far away from the idea of America being a real place, country that the rest of us have gotten.
On the ongoing, we still don't have any real answers going on day 6 since the near assassination of a once and likely future president. Are we just at the point now that the only 2 options we have left are: this is the grossest negligence and incompetence breakdown in modern national security history, okay? even more so than 9/11, because you're still talking about, 20 trained people who took how many years to infiltrate the system, and the monstrosity of how many planes fly in and out of America every single day. Here we're talking about one kid shimmy a wall. By the way, did you see that they said that the police sniper that took him out was from about 400 some odd yards away?
Yeah.
Which means they had some kind of security perimeter 500 yards out. And his shot was from 150 yards away. Yeah. So then how was he not spotted? No one saw him.
He was spotted.
How was he not stopped crawling up a wall with a rifle?
This is why you need to move on to number 2, because that's way more true.
So this is either the most negligent act of gross malfeasance in modern national security history. People, have you thought about where we are if that shot happens? Forget just not even the Civil War stuff. Even if that doesn't happen, the Republican Party in a presidential year, complete disarray. Trump's not officially the nominee. They don't have a running mate. They have to start their process all over again with nominating conventions and everything else. That would make it really hard for Republicans to go and win the next election. Weird how that would have worked itself out, huh?
Plan.
Anyway, so this is either the grossest negligence, misconduct in modern national security history, or something sinister. I have no idea how you come up with any other options than those.
How many rallies, outdoor rallies, everywhere, deep blue states, deep red states. He's got to have had done hundreds. Joe Biden moment there for me. Hundreds of these outdoor rallies, has he not?
Yes.
And just all of a sudden,
at least dozens,
right before the convention, oh, look at that. We forgot to secure a rooftop 130 yards away. Oh, golly darn.
With a perfect line of
sight.
sight.
We'll get them next time. That's just,
Remember during COVID, we started looking at their math and their data, and that it didn't add up. And remember when I used to say to you, used to look at you during those days, Todd, and say, this doesn't make any sense. Do you know why it doesn't make any sense?
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Because it doesn't make any sense. You know why this doesn't make sense? Because it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. All right. One last point I want to address is what is happening right now with the Democrats. Had small group and everything going on last night, so I wasn't around as much last night. And we love our small group, and that took priority, obviously. But I was pinged last night by my best corporate media mole, my best one, who assured me that the Democrats have moved way beyond whether Joe Biden's going to be replaced or not. They're on to the next argument while we are waiting to see the current argument come to some form of fruition. And that what is happening internally now is how to bypass Kamala. And that major donors have come forward and said, we know Biden cannot win. She can't either. So, what is the point of putting the party through something like all of this and all this tumult just to put forth another candidate who cannot win? All right, which I agree with that. I think I think at this point she is a stronger candidate than Biden, because I think at least she would allow them to run the kind of racially divisive campaign that probably holds a lot of their core coalition together. Right now, guys, we're in an era where the president of the Teamsters Union is addressing the RNC convention. Their coalition is at existential risk as we sit here right now. Okay? Existential risk. All right? And so at least Kamala gives them their best chance. If they lose, it's probably more like how Trump won in 2016, and it's not like 1980 or 1932 where you're digging out. There's nuclear fallout dig out here, right? You know what I'm saying? And you're like questioning your life choices as a party after something like that. But if they throw her by the side, then I have to believe they'd have to come out here with some form of minority representation to avoid the prophets of Baal just not cutting themselves there at their Mount Carmel convention. Okay, so I was told by my best media source last night that they've already moved on from Biden. Okay, this has moved on. They are discussing now what to do in his stead. Thoughts?
As you know, I was more bullish on Biden surviving before the assassination attempt happened. Generally speaking now, I absolutely agree with you. It doesn't take away the problem that they have of going away from Biden to Kamala or anybody else. Still creates a problem like, what did you know and when did you know it about Biden? So that game of chicken doesn't die no matter what. But I think now you see how the media is trying to survive, be nice about, thank God President Trump didn't die, even though he's Hitler and I hate him, and wink, wink. We did actually wish the worst for him. They're trying to navigate that. They're looking for an out. I think that out that they want, it has a face and a name. It's going to be Gretchen Whitmer because she's a woman, and perhaps more importantly, I almost got kidnapped. Sort of, not really, whatever. So, yeah, you're right.
Aaron?
You might have to get the gun out and shoot me, Todd. I understand. It's because, again, they're not like us. You've been harping on this message over and over again. Almost to an annoying level, Steve. They are not like us. But because they're not like us, I'm coming to get the gun out. I keep asking myself, how are they going to do that? How? I mean, that's apparently they're already, according to your mole, they're already conniving and planning on, or game theorying out how you would bypass a black woman as your nominee. They're already game theorying that out. If he drops out now, you can, I guess, at least punt it to the convention, get people warmed up. Now I'm kind of talking myself into this. Get people warmed up to different ideas of who could actually be the nominee, but you still got the question of how do you get Kamala Harris to basically step aside? I don't know how you do that. But then again, they're not like us. They can kind of get what they want. Now, the White House again this morning is coming out and saying, no. There's no contingencies that we're planning on where Biden is not at the top of the ticket. It's taken them this long. We're now in week 3 of this story. Week 3. Mm-hmm. If it hasn't happened yet, it didn't happen going into the attempted assassination. It's now starting to warm up afterwards. They don't have an unlimited amount of time.
Agreed. No, I'm not going to shoot you because you're right. I've moved my, likely one, but you're not wrong about this at all. They still have a huge problem with just Biden overall and Joe Biden and the degree to which they can be reasoned with and just what it looks like to abandon the White House in such a fashion. I mean, it's not without giant problems.
I wonder, too, how much of this is because they're so used to will to power that we are, like you said, we focus on processes. They focus on outcomes. Okay. And so how much of this is they actually have just moved on because they just are assuming that now they've gone to a new level of pressure. Now Obama's name's being invoked as telling people, according to the Washington Post, that it's time for Joe Biden to consider his viability as a candidate. So that's 48 hours away or less of Joe Biden coming, or probably Obama coming out publicly and telling Biden you have to go if he doesn't get the hint. They're just so used to the pressure they exert, creating or process in response to their pressure. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so they're just assuming that eventually they'll have reached a place where Led Zeppelin is right. When the levee breaks, that the Bidens have to respond. There's just no other choice. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and you're just going to lose 40 states and be a generational embarrassment.
Yeah, and they're so used to manipulating events. This has got to feel like very foreign territory to them. We talk about, look at the polls all the time. If they think they can still manipulate this somehow, they will. But is there a reality in play where no matter who they put forward, Trump becomes an almost 75% certainty? I don't know. But I do know if that exists, they'd be better off just leaving. It's not good for anybody from a, while he's still president perspective, but leaving him in there and then blaming the loss on him instead of having to take, that they're trying to figure that math out right now.
But they're also seeing, I think the math that goes into this as well is they also just saw the guy who could be second in line to the presidency just say America isn't an idea, it's an actual place. I think they're game theorying out as well. Can we lose this election? Can we afford to lose this election too? Maybe.
Sure. There's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Like if the Republicans had nominated somebody like Nikki Haley, I don't think any of this is going on. I think they're fine taking the L, right? But because of what you just said, the threat that this might be a paradigm shift, they're thinking maybe we can't afford that to take the L here. Yeah. All right, let's learn more about J.D. Vance next. Right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends at Constitution Wealth. I've got a question for you. Are you evaluating whom you're doing business with on the grounds that if you can avoid it, I don't want to directly fund people who hate me? Well, why not apply the exact same thing to your retirement, your investments, your portfolio? Why not, as much as you possibly can, divest yourself from the spirit of the ages, ESG, DEI, and other woke schemes that are threatening the very essence, fabric of our society? Our friends at Constitution Wealth, they can help you do that as well. All right? They can help you with putting your profits no longer at odds with your prophetic voice, if you will. Your values and virtues can align also with your yield, and you'll help them build the parallel economy by working with an investment firm composed of professionals who are patriots just like you. So partner with advisors who truly understand the signs of the times and what to do about them. Take action now. Visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze. If you do sign up, you'll get a free consultation to see if the fit is right for you. Get a free consultation today at constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Again, that's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Well, one of the men of the hour, of course, is the first-term senator from the state of Ohio, J.D. Vance, who, despite his attempts to turn me off last night by proclaiming that he is a proud alum of The Ohio State University, or as we know them now, the perennial runners-up in the Big Ten, because of my beloved Michigan Wolverines. I'm going to give this guy a chance to win me over nevertheless, all right? I do believe in a God of second chances. So despite that rake that he voluntarily stepped on last night, I'm going to give this guy a shot, okay? Aaron Baer is from the Ohio Center for Christian Virtue. He joins us now here on the show. Aaron, it's good to have you with us. How are you?
Great to see you, Steve. Doing really well.
All right, so I want to start with J.D. Vance and your first interactions with him. As a politician. He has mentioned that he started getting serious about Christianity, I think, around 2019. Okay. So he was kind of an already somewhat known voice on the right, but he had not achieved, public office yet. So can you give us, as someone that, leads an organization whose charge is to hold people accountable to standards like that once they claim them, what you have personally seen from him over the last few years?
Yeah, Steve, and I'm sure you've probably had interactions like this before where, JD had never run for office in Ohio before. He was coming in and jumping straight into a big Senate race, right? This was going to be a crowded field and a lot of proven voices running in that field, people who had track records that we'd worked with in the past at CCV. And so here was coming JD back to Ohio. He'd been living in the state for a little bit. And we sat down. This was sometime in 2020 or 2021. Sat down over lunch and had a conversation. And, again, a lot of times you have these meetings and the folks are telling you what you want to hear. They know you're the pro-family guy, the pro-life guy, the religious freedom guy. And so they're going to try to feed you things that you want to hear a lot of times. But even in that first interaction, I left it feeling like I had more of a meaningful interaction and conversation about what's actually happening to families today than I'd ever had with any elected official or somebody running for office. I think that the way I would describe it is that JD really understands what time it is in America, understands where we are, and has a faith that's real. I'll just say, Steve, one other quick thing as well is, we've all heard of the politician that, I've come to faith now, and now all of a sudden I'm with you. But when JD, he I
don't have any experience with that, Aaron. Can you fill me in?
I think
sarcasm is my spiritual gift. Continue. I apologize.
Oh yeah, no. As a fan of the program, I get that really well, especially with the introduction about Michigan. But with JD, he really came to faith, got baptized at St. Gertrude's in Cincinnati, and then started hanging out with the hardcore Catholics, right? The Sarab Amaris and those kind of guys, the kind of going to Franciscan University in Steubenville. Not the kind of Jesuit Catholics, if you will, sometimes that we see, the woke Catholics will see. JD, when he became a Christian, when he became a Catholic, really dove deep into the faith and was surrounding himself with people that we know are serious believers, serious Catholics. And that just spoke a lot. So those two interactions, that first interaction and the way he responded to becoming a Catholic, really spoke volumes about who he is.
I spoke to somebody, I won't reveal the name, but it is, promise you, a name everybody in this audience would know. And I spoke to them yesterday because this person knows J.D. Vance very, very well. And this person said, in all my years in politics, you never know with politicians. You just never know once, especially even if they have records and you move them up and they face a different level of scrutiny, pressure, etc. You just don't know. Okay. But one thing I've tried to find, this person told me, is someone who genuinely loves his wife and his family, because that's actually not as prevalent, especially even on the right, as I think a lot of people would assume or want to believe. And that he was at least confident, because that was an example of like a basic component of character, essentially. Okay. Yeah. And from what he has observed, getting to know JD very well over the last 8 years, is very obvious. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think again, you read about these types of things he says in his book. You see the types of things, even the priority he gave that in his speech last night, says a lot. But then just in the way he lives his life, the way he and his family are surrounded in Cincinnati, and him and his wife Lucia are going about raising their kids, just speaks volume about who he is personally. And again, we just lived through an abortion amendment fight here in Ohio that was gut-wrenching and terrible. And JD understands that the fight on life, the fight for protecting the most vulnerable, has to start with rebuilding the family. He sees what's happened to marriage in America, where in Ohio alone, 43% of kids are born into single-parent households. You start on that faulty foundation, and what we're trying to build upon is going to fall apart. And that's why, I always go back to say JD understands the time it is, and I don't love the word social conservatives. I'm a Christian first. Social conservative is a label that was put on us by the world around us. But as Christians involved in this, JD is really looking at big picture. How do we rebuild what's been broken?
I want to come back to the life issue in a minute, because that's, in my vetting so far, that's what you're talking about, Willis. Okay, that I want to get some clarity on. But since since this is a show driven by a biblical worldview, you're the head of the Ohio's Center for Christian Virtue. I do think that this is a sensitive topic, but we should discuss it. Otherwise, we're, I think, not doing our job. There is, we are studying the book of Romans right now on the show, as you know, as a listener to the show, right? And so this is the first truly diverse urban enclave of Christianity, between Jews and Gentiles worshiping together for the first time ever, and all the various entities within Greco-Roman culture and the pressures to bear. There's going to be people who are intermarried, who had marriages of people who in other religions pre-existed these relationships, right? Paul addresses in the New Testament what that looks like if you're the biblical doctrine for this is being unevenly yoked, for example. Yeah. Okay. And so what that means, if that can produce difficulties and how to navigate that. Okay. One thing I've looked at in my vetting is I often look at the wife too. If she is to the left, for example, of the candidate, eventually he will move to the left. I promise you. No man wants to go fight a war all day long and come home and fight the war again at home. He wants his wife's approval more than anybody else's. And if she doesn't stand by that mission, then he's not going to stand for you. I promise you that's the case 100%. Eventually that'll be proven true. So she seems like a sweet woman. She came across very well at the convention last night, but she also believes in what we believe to be a foreign, false religion. Okay, so now he's just beginning to navigate this, as a new believer himself. Any concerns about that or anything involving that you would address to Christians, or something to look for, or let's also do something to pray for, where JD and both his wife are concerned on that front?
Absolutely. I think it is something to pray for, as we pray for anybody who doesn't know the eternal peace and freedom of a life in Jesus Christ. At the same time, I think, again, this is where there is a track record here to look at, right? JD became a believer sometime around 2019. And if you look at that time, he's actually grown stronger in his positions. I don't think we can underestimate the race he ran here in 22, where he really declared from the get-go he was the pro-life candidate, he was the pro-family candidate, said some really controversial things on the transgender issue that the media went after him on. He voted, since being a senator, he voted against the redefining marriage bill in Congress, and was one of the few Republicans to actually do that in the Senate. So you've actually seen him grow stronger, right? I got to say, Steve, I completely understand what you're saying. We saw that here in Ohio Ohio with Rob Portman, right? This is a very sore subject. And when we get
he's got a son who succumbs to homosexuality, and all of a sudden a guy that had been a reliable social conservative voter just ends up betraying us on almost everything after that. Yes.
Exactly. We have PTSD in Ohio over that, just with politicians kind of turning their back to us. But what you've actually seen with JD is the guy who ran with really strong rhetoric and a really strong message, won with it, and then actually got stronger since being in the Senate on core issues, right? And at times even bucking, the Mitch McConnells of the world, who did put in big bucks to his election in 22. And so I think there's a record there. Obviously, with all of these folks, we need to pray for them. Obviously, we want to pray for his wife and for his family. But I feel really confident about who JD is, as confident as we can about any of these folks.
All right, so that brings me to the last thing I need to ask you about, and that was whatever one of these Sunday shows that I never watched that he was on. I just see clips when I get from church, and believe me, when I got home from church, I saw this clip a lot because a lot of people were sharing it with me. He was asked about the abortion drug, which for people that don't understand, since Roe v. Wade and the momentum that we have had basically shutting Planned Parenthood clinics down all over the country, lots of states have like a handful or fewer Planned Parenthood clinics left. Well, they've adjusted by making about 2/3 of the baby kills they do every day in this culture are done via chemical telemed abortion or this abortion drug. He went on TV and said he was fine with providing access for this, and this has sparked a lot of concerns in my realm, where everything else people are like, this guy almost seems too good to be true, okay? And then on the one issue that nobody wants him to screw up, you're like, what happened there? Okay, so that's my question to you. What happened there?
Yeah, what I'll just say is when I got the same reaction, both when I saw it and then my phone started blowing up soon after. The JD Vance, this is where I'll just say actions speak louder to words than me. I've told a number of folks, I don't think this is a Rob Portman moment where he was coming out with a new position that he's declaring he's no longer pro-life or things like that. I trust JD Vance in the White House to do everything he can to build up families and to affirm life. Now, again, he's on a ticket with a guy that we know isn't pro-life. And
he's just more anti-abortion than the other people are, but he's not necessarily pro-life. Correct.
And he's very transactional, right? In terms of, hey, you're going to back me, then I'll put your Supreme Court justices on there. I think but at the same time, this guy has done more for the pro-life movement in many ways than any other elected official in the past. And
that is also true. Yes. Yeah.
For pro-lifers right now, we need to see the sign that President Trump tapped JD Vance for this role. When JD Vance is very outspoken on these issues, he's not shied away from them. His voting record reflects both a strong pro-life but also pro-family stance. I think we're going to have a better friend in the White House than we've ever had before with JD Vance, and I include that. And I'm a Mike Pence fan, but I think we're going to have. I'm
going to try not to hold that and the Ohio State thing both against you, but that is strike two. You just need to know that.
I appreciate that. But I'll say with Vance, I think when I keep coming back to, he understands the time. He's going to know what we need to do to move the ball forward as a movement better than anybody else we've seen in a practical way. Right. I also think you can't underestimate this guy. He's in, him and I are about the same generation. We're a millennial generation. We grew up in this culture. He understands the culture we're living in and what we need to rebuild to restore the country we want to see.
Aaron, really appreciate you making time on short notice to do this. It was an important conversation I think our audience needed to hear. And I'll pray for you and your allegiance to those idolatrous Buckeyes. That'll be on my prayer list as well. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I should say, I'm an Ohio University grad. So,
guilt by association. You're Ohio State adjacent.
True. That is true. I'll own it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Take care. We'll find out what you guys think in a moment after I tell you about our friends at America's Christian Credit Union, because there used to be a time when our financial institutions used to respect our values. So now many of them are actually funding the smut. We just saw it on the streets last month. And that's why if you're like, hey, again, is there an option here where I can go and take my money? There is. It's called America's Christian Credit Union. It's the #1 banking institution right now on Public Square. And here's the thing, not that there's anything wrong with that, because we need a lot of new startups right now. Amen. Okay, with our belief system. But I understand when it comes to your money, you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to put my money in a new startup. Well, these guys have been around for 65 years. They're going on a second full generation of doing business, all right, with families, ministries, and businesses across the country as a trusted financial partner partner. You'll get the convenience of more than 35,000 branches and ATMs nationwide as well. If you want to make the switch today, you can find them online at America's, plural, America's Christian CU for credit union, americaschristiancu.com/switch. That's americaschristiancu.com/switch, pardon me. And America's Christian Credit Union is federally insured by the National Credit Union Administration. All right, what do you guys think of the conversation we just had with Aaron Baer?
Yeah, I mean, for a second there, I thought there might be a trap door button when the Pence thing came up, because, I mean, these...
Your eyes got big like Anna's did? Uh-oh, what's going to happen next? Yeah.
We gotta hope that vis-a-vis this issue and many, many others, J.D. Vance has absolutely nothing to do with the furrowed brow of Mike Pence. The very furrowed brow that is not like, oh, Trump cannot be negotiated with. So there's that. But here's an overall post-Roe. It's been an absolute disaster for life on many fronts. Certainly organizationally. I mean, there's been, pickups certainly in certain states, but nationally, organizationally, we got a lot of pieces to pick up. So, I mean, trust but verify. We can hardly do worse.
Aaron?
So you quoted Aaron Baer, I believe, in a tweet over the weekend, right? Mm-hmm. And not going to out this person by name, but one of our dear listeners DM'd me before I even knew he was coming on the show, and I sent you this to you last night and said, be careful with this Aaron Baer guy. That's basically the message that was sent. And I said, duly noted. Again, this is before I even knew he was coming on the show. And in the following thing that this listener sent me was also said, pretty much agree with everything that he says about J.D. Vance, though. So I think it kind of gives you an endorsement a little bit about J.D. Vance, is that even somebody who really doesn't trust the source here, for whatever reason, nobody's going to be perfect.
It seemed like it was stemmed in what the approach is for life. Do we do this incrementally or via abolition?
It was that type of thing.
Okay.
Still,
I wanted to clarify that so people don't think he's like ripping off donors or something. No. Let's fill in the blanks on that. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It was just a tactic thing.
Yeah.
Even that type of person, critical of the person that we just had on, agrees with his assessment on J.D. Vance. We've got Dick Cheney, Sarah Palin, Paul Ryan, Mike Pence, J.D. Vance. One of these things, in my mind, is not like the other, and I'm not talking about Sarah Palin. That's where I'm coming down on him.
Okay. All right. I hope a very apostolic small a Theology Thursday is next. Stay tuned. All right, we're back here with Hour 2 here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, live on X right now as well. Don't forget that you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Just email us, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then if you are a podcast listener, if you wouldn't mind, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you do, that really helps the program. We thank all of you that have done so. And you can also, to make sure you don't miss any episodes, because why would you want to go into a thing like that, hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow, and that way, every time we drop one of these things in your RSS feed, it'll drop right there in your RSS feed every single day, so you don't miss an episode. Thank you to those who have done that for us as well. Thanks to our friends at Eden Pure. Their Thunderstorm air purifier has been a success story for many of you in this audience. One of the products we've gotten the most feedback on since we started the show is the Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier, because it's not an air freshener. It's a purifier. It goes after the components and elements that are causing that bad air in your home. The cigarette smoke, the BO, the burnt food, mildew, bacteria, even some viruses as well. You can get the 3-pack for whole home protection right now. Save over $200 if you do. So you can put one on every level of your house, or if you got like maybe a ranch, okay, basement, main level, then maybe in the garage. All right. Go to EdenPureDeals.com to get those savings of over $200 on the 3-pack there. Eden, like the place we unfortunately got kicked out of. EdenPureDeals.com. Use the discount code Steve3 for the 3-pack. Steve3 is the discount code at EdenPureDeals.com. All right, for Theology Thursday, I want us this week to take the book of Romans that we are studying verse by verse and directly apply it to what is right now a book of Romans moment for American believers, particularly if you are active in the civic realm. And if you're tuned into a show like this, that's you, okay? And remember our introduction to Romans. Paul is writing to really the first diverse urban enclave of Christianity. We have Gentiles and Jews worshiping together. All right, so before the veil is torn at the crucifixion, and now we can all boldly approach the throne of grace. Before that, God confined worship of him to a nation. And that nation was to be a light to other nations. And one of the ways to be a light was because they didn't have the Holy Spirit yet, not democratically, God would send prophets who were filled with the Spirit, but as individual believers, they didn't have the Spirit yet. And so to stop them from succumbing to the influences of the other nations, they were encouraged to not mingle with them, not to marry with them, not to worship with them, to be set apart from them. That's another word. That's the word holy. One of its definitions is to be set apart. But now that the veil is torn, that the house of prayer that will be a house for all nations that Isaiah prophesied, that Jesus, when he, in his zeal, drove the money changers out of the temple, quoted from. Now that this era is upon us, now that Peter, the leader of the early church, is told to no longer shun Gentiles, to no longer hide from them. Now that Paul, himself a Hebrew of Hebrews, who viewed Christianity originally as a threat to the integrity of the one true religion, and went out to therefore hunt Christians, and went to a place called Syria, a town called Antioch, on a road called to Damascus, which mean who would have lived in Syria? Many Gentiles. And now he is called to be the apostle to these Gentiles he would have had nothing to do with beforehand. And so now for the first time in Rome, these two cultures are mingling under one culture, one Lord and one baptism. The Jews seeing Jesus, the Jews that are in this enclave, seeing Yeshua as the fulfillment of the faith. He is the one that the law and the prophets and the Psalms pointed towards. He is the way, the truth, and the life. The first century Jews referred to their religion as the way. And so when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he is saying to a Jewish audience, I am the faith. I'm the faith incarnate. I'm the Word of God incarnate, which is why the Gospel of John, written by a Jew, says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh, and the Word was God. Okay? That's what that means. And so now they've got to learn for the first time how to even live together. They're not even accustomed to this. Some are going to temple to honor all of the festivals. Hey, Jesus went to Hanukkah, the festival of dedication. I should go too. I'm a Jew. Jesus went to Passover. He's the Passover lamb himself. I should go to the temple during Passover. And the Gentiles are like, what is a Passover? And we have temples too. There were the Jupiter, Saturn, okay, Diana. I thought we weren't supposed to go to temples anymore because we're Christians now. They had to navigate all of this confusion and learn to live together. On top of that, so they're in, I guess you would call it a coalition. And on top of that now, they're in this coalition trying to figure out how to live together while at the same time the most powerful force, earthly force on this planet at the time, Rome. The empire of iron that Daniel prophesied that would crush all of the other empires is now bringing the full weight of its coercive force upon them. That's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It's a bit.
First of all, how do we live together? Number one. Number two, how do we live at all? That is a lot of pressure. And it is in that backdrop that Paul writes this letter, perhaps, I think, my own opinion, his greatest theological work, which is why we're studying it. It is in similar, although not nearly as ferocious, thank the Lord, pressure that we now are operating in this moment today. And I want to help us as best I can, small a apostolically, to help provide us a path forward from here. Because we are living through a seminal moment here. When I'm done, be a good Berean. Put everything I'm about to tell you, put it up against the scriptures, the teachings of the church fathers, and come now, let us reason together, because I'm going to promise you, this will not be a one-time conversation. View this conversation that we are about to have as essentially March 16th, 2020. The first time we entered into the realm of skepticism of the overall COVID narrative. We weren't right all the time. Remember, I told my own mom to take the jab originally. We weren't ahead of the curve all the time, but we were at least one of the first into the fight of questioning the narrative and what's the path out of this and then the way forward, right?
Yep.
And that's what we're going to do with this, because the next couple of years are going to be very turbulent for those of us who are Christians operating in the civic realm. And I don't know if you've looked around a lot, but there aren't a lot of churches that seem like they're really anxious to equip us for the times in which we live, which is how we got here in the first place. Amen?
Yes, amen.
So we're going to do our best as a show to step into that breach. Why? Because we're in this battle with you. We're fighting it with you. Now, at different times during these conversations, the you might be different. So let me clarify who the you is here. Our show has been extremely concerned about the encroaching godlessness on the right over the last year plus, especially. We are not happy to hear people on the right use the term Puritan as a put down. I've pointed that out many times. I mean, if you're America first, folks, there's no America without the Puritans. So stop using the Puritans as a curse word. That's your heritage. You want to save your legacy as a people. They're the legacy. They started it. They're the OGs. I think we have demonstrated on our show we are willing to confront some of the elements within MAGA that seem to represent or be encouraging this godlessness. Have we not done that topic many times?
Of course.
And are we going to have to probably do it many times more moving forward?
And we will.
And we will. But that's not the you right now. Just like Romans has this symmetry I've talked about, where it goes after the people not in your camp, and you're like, yeah, get them. And then all of a sudden Paul turns on, all right, now let's talk about y'all. And you're like, no, let's not. Which is why a lot of churches don't teach Romans. It convicts everybody. No one escapes conviction in this book. I want to talk to the people like that are more like us, and have probably cheered us when we supported DeSantis over Trump. Probably cheer us when we point out our concerns about the godlessness that is encroaching on the right within some elements of MAGA. Probably cheer us when we talk about how concerned we are about some of the grifting that goes on our side, right? Okay. You are the people that I want to talk to here today, primarily. Did I say exclusively? Nope. No. Because I'm hoping that that others in our coalition will understand maybe where people like us are coming from, as I urge people on my side of this coalition to understand you and where you're coming from. Because we are in this together, folks. Like I was quoting one of my all-time favorite films, It's a Wonderful Life. This is a sticky wicket, George. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have an article out right now with David Barton and Ryan Walters, the superintendent of schools of Oklahoma, in the Washington Times. Basically, for evangelicals at this point, our choice is Trump or prison. And I'm not even slightly exaggerating. Okay? Trump, or you were too ferocious in your pro-life comments or prayers, prison it is. That has occurred. Have we not covered these stories?
Absolutely.
That's essentially the choice right now. And from prison, you are welcome to articulate all of the most intricate works on cultural exegesis you can. And good luck to you, because frankly, a lot of the greatest works of Christendom have been written in where? In prisons. Okay, but I'm reminded of what my very first boss in radio, after I became a Christian, told me. Steve, as Christians, we're called to be martyrs when the moment calls for it, but we are not called to seek out a shiny sword and ask if we can fall upon it. It is one thing to be willing to go to prison. It is another thing to just say, I guess I'll just sit here and let them do it to me. I don't know what honor there is in that. You see what I'm saying?
I do, but that distinction you just meant clearly is beyond people's capacity at the moment, which is why what you're about to do is so very important.
So to my own people here, well, I think if you're listening to this, whatever faction you're in, you're more Trump than us, you're our people. To my native sect, is that a good way of putting it? The people that typically would be the most inclined to give us the benefit of the doubt and cheer us on, that right now we are at odds with a sizable segment of.
Yes.
Okay. Since Saturday, it's to you that I want to speak and to try to do my best to do so small a apostolically. And then when it's over, we can come now and reason together, and we'll argue about this probably and what it means over the next few years as new stories develop and issues arise that clarify things. And I'll say the same thing to the MAGA folks in our audience. We'll probably continue on saying, well, there are some things as Christians, we want to fight with you guys. We just can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like we like, maybe you don't understand why I asked a question about why it matters that J.D. Vance's wife is a Hindu for him as a Christian. And I want the opportunity to explain all of those things so we can come now and reason together. But I think for us to get that opportunity, we have to understand first the moment that we are in. So to the people who normally are fans of what we do here, because of the contrarian stances we take, it is to you now, my wing of the family, I would like to talk. Okay? There are four things that I want to say to you. I want to use 3 allegories, and then after those allegories, chart a path forward of what it means now if those things are true and what we do instead. Number 1, I want us to understand the moment that we are in. When I was on the Cruz campaign, evangelical outreach is one of the things I worked on heavily. And we were very flummoxed. Here we have a Southern Baptist, and a flaming Southern Baptist, by the way, whose daddy's a minister and who was literally Todd Marinovich. And I mean, literally, Ted Cruz is an amalgamation of Americana. His daddy literally raised him. Like most people, I taught myself how to read watching Spider-Man on the Electric Company and reading comic books and cereal boxes. Raphael Cruz taught Ted Cruz how to read via the Federalist letters, okay? I mean, it's Ted's is a construct, and I mean that as a compliment, of American civics. And yet, this would have seemed to be like the dream candidate, right? Mm-hmm. And we're losing Southern Baptists to Donald Trump. And towards the end of the race, I think I finally figured out why, but by then it was too late. And we talked about this at the time, early on, but it's been a few years since I've drawn this analogy, and I think it's even more true right now. People preferred that the Gary Cooper sheriff, the man of dignity, the man of that you want your sons to grow up to be like, you want to marry your daughters off to. They preferred that the Gary Cooper sheriff would be the hero of the story. They kept asking for the Gary Cooper sheriff. They kept voting him sheriff and saying, please, you keep promising us you're going to do something about these banditos. Can you clean out these banditos? They're destroying our town. They're destroying our way of life here. And the Gary Cooper sheriff kept promising them that he would do so. But whenever the banditos showed up for that showdown there in this town square at high noon, he never showed. He had other things to do, other things to worry about. Sooner or later, your choices become crystallized. Like I just said, I think the choice at this point is you vote for Trump or you risk going to prison for what you believe. And you may want to do that, then do that. But that's the risk you're taking, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that's what I think the risk is. I could be wrong, but I kind of think when they're shooting at the people that represent us, I'm not. Okay? Eventually, the people become so desperate that you hear a song, fires up. And out comes the drifter, the pale rider, the anti-hero. Now, people didn't turn to this figure easily. They know, they're aware, this will come with collateral damage. They know this. That's why they preferred the more dignified warrior. But even though they wanted the more dignified warrior, they still wanted a warrior. Mm-hmm. Dignity without the warrior just leaves you dead with dignity. You're still dead.
Okay. A warrior is something that the Republican Party has been putting out?
Death with dignity has kind of been the number one campaign plank of the Republican Party for most of my lifetime. Yes, death with dignity. Cultural death with dignity. Yes. Thank you, Todd. That's right on the money. Eventually, you just accept that the collateral damage is an acceptable risk to accept vis-a-vis annihilation. You know that it could very well be your storefront that gets totally shot out. And back then, things weren't insured. So that meant you were going to start totally over financially. Bankruptcy's bad, right? That sucks. Being destitute's bad.
Sure.
What's worse than bankruptcy? Being dead. Being dead worse than your kids shot right in front of you worse than bankruptcy, right? You can try to rebuild your finances. You can't, bring your kids back to life. They're dead. Can't unrape your daughters after the banditos have had their way with them. See what I'm saying? Can't unrape them. They've been raped. They're scarred. So you just accept that it might be my storefront that gets shot out. It might be someone I know and care about who is the innocent caught in the crosshairs. But if we do not make this change right now and anoint this figure right now, we're done. We're over. That is who Trump was in 2016. He did many of the things that he said, not all, namely not build a wall, for example, but he did he did recognize Jerusalem as the rightful capital of Israel after we were told by Republicans for 30 years they were going to do that. He did it. He did appoint the justices that overturned Roe versus Wade after Republicans told us for 30 years they were going to do it. He did. He did bring unprecedented stability to the Middle East so that our Christian kids and brothers and sisters weren't dying in needless internecine Muslim wars as they had been the previous decade plus. He did do that. Those things did all happen, did they not?
Lots
did they happen?
of boxes did get checked.
Now, man, in between those moments, and if you listen to our show day to day, between those moments, was the collateral damage high?
Absolutely.
Was the volume of rakes stepped upon voluminous?
I remember them.
Yes, they were. But so day to day, there was high collateral damage. But in the end, were there less banditos than there were prior to when he was brought in? That's at least true until March 16th of 2020. At least true until then.
Why my pause? I was up to the point, yes, when the other side realized what game was afoot.
Yes. What's happening is now we're in the phase of Trump is now being celebrated for what he did before. And now, since he did this before, let's bring him back to do it again since the banditos are returned and they're even worse than they were before. Did Clint Eastwood make just one spaghetti Western? No. Made a whole franchise of them because the banditos kept coming back, right? Okay. And the Gary Cooper sheriff kept not showing up, right? Okay. All right. And so... I know what then why didn't they go to DeSantis, who was better at this, we think, and didn't bring the rakes and everything else? We can discuss and debate that. The decision has been made. I think a lot of it had to do with Trump's indictments and the feeling like we couldn't desert him after he fought for us. And that is something primal that I understand. I get that. Okay. But you have to understand Trump has a body count of the enemy, and there is a reason why people are like, I'd rather go with his body count and the high collateral damage than risk someone who won't give me any body count, politically speaking here, of course, right? All right. Which brings me to who Trump actually is, I think, to use a biblical analogy. And I've used this before. I don't think Trump is David. I don't think Trump is Nebuchadnezzar. I think Trump is Samson. Samson was a very problematic figure. Samson was also greatly feared by the spirit of the age. In his time, it was embodied in a people called the Philistines, a demonic culture looking to infiltrate God's people with their demonic influences and ideologies and to conquer them with them. Now, Samson is brought forth in a book known as Judges, which is arguably, other than when we killed God at the cross, the next darkest moment in the history of God's people is the book of Judges, probably.
Yes.
Yeah. Where the tagline of Judges is everyone does, and Israel had no king, so everyone does what is wise in their own eyes. No standard, no plumb line. Moral subjectivism reigns. One of the nice guy priests could have opposed the Philistines, could have done that. No one was stopping them from doing that. But they didn't, did they?
They did not.
In fact, there is a moment when one of the nice guys is called by God to go stop the Philistines. He responds by going to a woman and saying, I'll only do it if you come with me. That's the era that we're living in here. And the woman is like, I'll come with you, but just so you know, people are going to mock you for thousands of years because you wouldn't do this unless the skirt led the way. Okay? That happens before Samson. Okay? So this is the era. And any parallels here? Anything familiar? Anything strike you as something that might resonate with the times in which we're in now? Anything at all?
I'm catching a whiff.
Okay, you pick it up when I'm laying down here. Okay. Now Samson, you can tell that he is a threat to the spirit of the age because they keep trying to kill him. They keep trying to take him out. Now again, there aren't a lot of Christian kids named Samson today. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. Not a lot of kids named Samson.
Making Samson great again.
And we're not Christian kid. There aren't a lot. Chris Samson's a very problematic figure. But your enemies will tell you who they fear. Oh man, they feared him. You want to talk about body counts? Samson had a trophy case. And despite all of his flaws, it was very clear there was a calling on his life and that he was being used to defend God's people from the spirit of the age, and he did. His last great act is he takes, and I've alluded to this I don't know how many times on this show, he takes the pillars of the temple of Dagon. Dagon was a fish demon, so like a bastardization of the fish that the Christians would later draw in the sand to signify the secret signal that they were Christians and it was safe to talk in Rome. Dagon was a fish demon that the Philistines worshiped, a literal demon. They built a temple to this fish demon. And in his last act on earth, Samson, with his super strength, plunges the pillars of the temple of Dagon into the ground. And the fish demon's idol face goes face down in the dirt, which is a sign in the ancient world of disrespect, of being conquered. And all of the Philistines die, including Samson. Now, here's the thing. I've mentioned before in theology classes, they always ask, is God immanent or transcendent? And the answer always is what?
Yes.
Yes, he's both. So God uses this very problematic figure that maybe you don't want your kids to grow up and be like completely, and you don't necessarily sure if you want your daughters being married to him, but he uses this problematic figure. He gives him some form of giftedness despite his brokenness to have one of the great victories in all of ancient Israel, correct? That happened, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think there is some evidence given what has gone on with Donald Trump. Maybe there is a similar calling upon his life. And now Trump is talking about, I think God spared me. My life is different. Let's pray that's true. Let's pray there'll be fruit that shows that. Don't be arms crossed moralist. The most pharisaical thing in the Bible is when the Pharisees say nothing could good come from Nazareth. That's when they were doomed right there. The idea that if you violate our traditions, our understandings, that it can't be good only if it comes through our way of doing things, that's when you're screwed, right? Pharisaism is not keeping the letter of the law. That's not what it means. Actually, one of the few times Jesus affirms the Pharisees in the Gospels is when he says, you are right to keep the letter of the law. It's when they did that in violation of the spirit of the law. That's when he condemns them. So don't, squeal that Trump is now saying God's changed his life like a seal and saying, hey, he's the one. He might be, but yeah. Also don't root against it. Just sit back. We root for people's redemptions, and we're fruit inspectors, and let's always hope for the best. Let's err on the side of hoping for the best rather than waiting for the worst. That's the parable of the talents, and you're the guy at the end that Jesus has bad things to say about. Don't do that. Gamble, if anything, if you're going to err on the side of redemption, going too far with it, projecting too much of it, because mercy triumphs over judgment. Paul writes that in Romans, in fact. So some of you are saying, well, Steve, he may have this calling, but Trump did this wrong, and he didn't repent of this with COVID, and he didn't do that, and he needs to be held accountable. He has been. See, I didn't tell you all of Samson's story. Samson creates this heroic act, but you know why he's in that temple? You know why? He has violated his Nazarene vow, which means he's gone against the calling that God gave him. He married outside of Israel and opened himself to he married a Philistine. and opened himself up to persecution by the very people he was called to end the persecution of. He's disrespectful of his father. He's disrespectful of God. He's disrespectful of his family line. He's very haughty. He's very arrogant. So God is still using him to do these mighty works to save his people. But at the same time, the God who is both immanent and transcendent simultaneously is also holding him accountable for his wrongdoings. Samson does not escape punishment for defying God. Donald Trump is still, guys, in about 6 weeks facing potentially being sentenced to 100 years in prison. He's lost millions, billions of dollars we can't even begin to contemplate. His old life of being a world-renowned, the guy loves being loved more than anything else. He was one of the most beloved figures in the world. Now he is a symbol of division no matter where he goes, no matter what he does. His kids have faced that. His entire family has faced that. He's been shunned by his peer group. He's faced prison. He's faced impeachment scandals. And forgive me, he just about got murdered. The idea that there's been no accountability for Donald Trump for any of the times that he has made this about him, he has stepped on a rake, he has defied God's law, God's morality, God's word, that is not true. And God is better at holding people accountable than us. Way better. You are watching, I believe, God both call this Samson-esque figure to essentially catch the strays that are supposed to be targeted at his people, and then holding him accountable for his misdeeds at the same time. Exactly what he did with Samson. Exactly what he did. Exactly. You're not going to be better at holding Donald Trump accountable than God is. I can promise you that. So we've spent a lot of time over the years going after the nicer than God crowd. I can promise you, if you're a moralist, you're not going to do better at holding somebody accountable for their immoralities than God will. You're not. Don't be nicer than God. Don't try to be better at justice than God, though, either. Donald Trump got up the next morning to go play golf at Mar-a-Lago, looking over, something he's done 10 million times, looking over his shoulder in ways he's never done before, thinking he was immortal. He had a bullet grazed your ear recently? Yeah, don't tell me he's not being held accountable. Don't tell me he's not facing consequences for his actions, both good and bad. He is. Because God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. Which brings me to one more allegory I want to make when we come back, and then the path forward in response to that. Stay tuned. So if I am correct that the people grew so desperate after the dignified Gary Cooper sheriff never showed up to clear the town of the banditos that they turned to the drifter, the pale rider, the anti-hero. And that anti-hero has some kind of Samson-esque calling where his sheer guile and inner strength is being used by God to protect and defend his people. But then on the other side of that is his lack of discipline, humility, understanding that God is God and he is not, and the disobedience that comes with that comes with its own consequences for him and God's people that they're all held accountable for at the exact same time. If I'm right about that, then I think we have to prophetically ask ourselves, why? What happened to lead to this? That's where I want to get to my third allegory. Jesus tells this very underrated, in my opinion, a parable, but he's really saying this about the Jewish people. The king that holds a banquet, and that his loyal subjects have been waiting many, many years for this wedding. And then finally, now is the time for the wedding to occur. And the invites are sent out. But the people that the wedding was meant to happen for, they've got other things to do. They're distracted. They've moved on. They've grown impatient. One of the things we'll talk about later in Romans is Paul discussing using us as Gentiles to make God's people, the Jews, jealous. He'll get into this, what it means to be grafted into the covenant. And so Jesus continues this parable and says, eventually the king grows frustrated and finally looks at his servants and says, fling open the doors and let anyone who wants to come to this wedding. It's going down anyway. We're having the wedding. And let anyone who wants to come be invited. That's us, the Gentiles. What Jesus is saying is God's people have missed me like they missed so many prophets before me. And so now everyone is welcome to come, circumcised or not. Let me apply this, if you don't mind, in a different context, but a similar principle. We have cried out, Lord, how much longer will this darkness in this country continue? Lord, how much longer will there not be justice? Will there not be pushback? Will we not fight back? And God finally said, you're right. Call the churches. Call my people. Call the Christian leaders. The battle's begun. Sound the shofar. They didn't show up. They got a megapolis to build. They've got khakis to pleat. They've got a sweater vest to unwrinkle. They've got skinny jeans to iron. They've got a purpose to drive. They've got a satellite campus to found and franchise themselves, because apparently you couldn't find a local minister in that town that could actually preach the word of God, and you're so special, someone else had to do it. Over hologram, virtually. They had to do that. Meanwhile, this darkness is still out here, correct?
Yep.
Meanwhile, the name of God is still being cursed, is it not?
Yes.
Meanwhile, his laws, his ways, his revelation is still being desecrated, is it not?
Yes.
So God flings open the doors and says, well, we're going to have the war because it needs to be had. Going to have the battle, needs to be had. So let anybody who will come. I have things about Trump and the people, some aspects of his movement I don't understand. I don't think I will ever understand. I don't jive with. I don't think I will ever jive with. I'm not comfortable seeing graphics like there are the surge of Grindr. That can't all be Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott. I'm uncomfortable at the surge of Grindr app usage at the GOP convention. Okay? All right? But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Who's offended the spirit of the age more in the last year? George Santos or your pastor? Who? Who? Tell me. Who? Tell me who. A gay man so offended them they had to expunge him from Congress. Your pastor just shut down his church because Nero told him to. Do you have a pastor worthy of being shot at? Because I kind of think the problem we've got in this country more than any other is our pastors aren't worthy of prison and being shot at.
I'll give that an amen.
Why is this billionaire playboy with a tabloid greatest hits album out here catching strays from demons that your pastor and our pastors aren't? Why? Because he's a threat and they're not. So here's what I would say to my own camp within this right-wing family. We are here because when the battle was, Mike Pence could have been this person. The Lord brought the battle, put it right on his doorstep. He's governor of Indiana during the Final Four, one of the biggest platforms in the world. And there's a battle over a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And the spirit of the age comes to Governor Pence in a state Republicans never lose. Give me any kind of Republican and you win. And dude, you can't. Obama couldn't win Indiana. If there was ever a place to have this fight, it would have been Indiana. Yep. Mike Pence puckered, backed down, and it was so bad that he went treacherous when the Family Research Council analyzed his compromise, his watered-down compromise on religious freedom. They actually came to the conclusion Christians were more likely to be targeted after Mike Pence's compromise than they were before if he had done nothing. Nothing. It could have been Gary Cooper. It could have been the guy that bounces his eyes every time a chick wearing yoga pants with no panty line walks into the gym. It could have been that guy, could it have not?
Yep.
It could have. Well, how many decades was that guy given a chance to run to the battle, to lead the fight? How many decades?
Way more than
How many
most.
decades did he have time to throw off the parson garb and lead the militia like the Black Robe Regiment right out of the steeple? How many times? How many? And even when they sit there across the street from church and trans the kids and soul murder them with Drag Queen Storytime Hour, still can't be bothered. We've got a growth program. Well, this war is going to happen, with or without us. And if the fact that they're shooting the people they think represents us in broad daylight doesn't indicate to you that the battle is here, then I don't know what it will until they shoot you, and I hope that doesn't happen. This is it. This is the fight. If you miss this, all that godlessness and everything else in MAGA that we're concerned about, it will have no pushback. I'm sorry the guy wearing the American flag shirt, and flipping the bird on live television. I know your church growth consultants tell you that you can't build a church around that guy. And I'm sorry that he can't write as big of a check as the suburbanites, okay, who just want to be told that God has a plan for you. But that guy's in the fight. That guy's in the soup. He gets Jesus too. Not just for the dignified people. Not just for the nice guys. The guy flipping the bird with the American flag, who's there and exalts Trump because he recognizes there's a war. He doesn't maybe understand it, doesn't know what really caused it, thinks he does, probably doesn't. But he showed up. The king said, time to go to war. He showed up. I'm in. Here I am, Lord, send me. Doesn't know who the Lord is, but he showed up. We didn't. We're over here with our furrowed brows and our crossed arms. Well, don't do it like this. Don't say it like that. Don't step on that rake. Don't do this. It's a math equation. It's a war. It's a war. That's what it is. And it crystallized to me when I saw them try to murder him in the head, the spirit of the age, the they. It crystallized this to me on Saturday. Oh no, I've become that guy. I am the guy who brought his daughter home, his beloved daughter. You'll see in the overtime here in a few minutes when we record it. I brought her home in a crib in a room with my porn collection. For whatever reason, God chose to save that guy, me. For whatever reason, he chose to sanctify that guy, me. And for whatever reason, I think the reason is so I can say things to you like this right now that need to be said. I'm here. I have nothing deserving of this calling. I graduated from no seminary. I have no character civic virtue award. There is nothing indicating I'm worthy of this platform other than God does not call the qualified. He qualifies those whom he has called. Now, does that mean therefore, if you're called, you're not held accountable? No. I hire men to hold me accountable. You guys don't know this. Off the air, Todd and I have nearly gotten in fistfights before. That's a slight exaggeration. All right. You don't know this, okay?
It's been about college football, to be fair, but then...
Yeah, but it was still over something, yes. No, there must be elders. There must be accountability. We can be that accountability, but the point of accountability is not to be preening moralists. It's to say, hey, man, you've got the right inclinations. We were broken vessels too. Let me show you the master potter who can put you back together so that you can put all the pieces together and truly see what is truly happening here and understand. If you leave and walk away from this fight, I fear we will give this fight over totally to people who don't understand our Lord and therefore don't understand how to win, what it will take to win, think they can just maybe anger their way out of it and populist their way out of it, and they won't be able to. They need help. They need guidance. It's time to disciple Trump's base too. We've spent all these years trying to follow Tim Keller and create a church where New York City left-wingers felt comfortable, but then when Trump's people didn't want to take the jab, Tim Keller made them sit separate from the rest of his church. That happened, by the way. When Trump's people didn't want to take even Trump's own jab, he made them he segregated them and made the nice lefties voting for all the trash in this society who dutifully offered up their arms to the mark and the spirit of the age. They got to sit in the front row. We cannot do this. The war will happen without us. It's our war. We were put here to wage this war. Do not be the people who say, I've got other things to do. I've got other books to read. I've got other conscientiouses to object. We need to be in this fight. It's our fight. And if we're not in this fight's going to go bad. Do not take your light and hide it under a bushel. We did this for a generation. And that's how we ended up with the guy who thinks that the F-bomb is a conjunction with the American flag, who loves this country but doesn't know the Lord. That's how he ended up on the front lines while we're over here scanning the book section, reading about battles, reading about what it would be like to be in the perfect fight one day. It's here now. The stuff we prayed for, we wanted, when will this happen? When can we finally confront this evil? Now is the time. Now. We have lost so much credibility with this culture over our unwillingness. We put everything else ahead. And we left that guy with the American flag and the F-bomb as a conjunction. We left him behind because Christianity Today told us he wasn't valuable. He was a cretin. So go after the people that clapped and cheered, I'm no longer a racist, when Obama's a voter, when Obama wins instead. Now, am I saying not to go after those people?
Nope.
But we were told to only go after those people. These other folks over here, your cousin, the people you think are Cousin Eddie, they're the ones fighting, bleeding. They're the ones that were in the line of sight of that shooter. It could have been any of them. They're catching strays. We're over here writing blogs. What the hell are we doing? Get in the fight. And the king looks at us and says, fine then, I guess we'll just go with the soldiers we've got. See you at the library. After Drag Queen Storytime Hour, of course. Todd and Aaron, I want to get your thoughts on this. First, a word from our friends at Freedom Chamber. They are trying to build a parallel economy to counter the Chamber of Commerce and the globalists, particularly if you are a small or medium-sized business. They're trying to build the pro-American business network. You can join other American businesses across all commercial sectors. The Freedom Chamber's mission is to promote our values while fostering the growth, sustainability, and success of member companies. The Freedom Chamber is a dynamic and innovative organization with comprehensive support, robust resources, and exclusively networking opportunities. You can join today at freedomchamber.net. Again, you can join today at freedomchamber.net. I close with one more thing. Before you want to judge these MAGA folks, ask yourself this. Steve Bannon is sitting in a prison cell right now. Right now. Ever been on Steve Bannon's show? Nope.
Not that I know.
I don't even know Steve Bannon. No idea. No clue. Know who he is, don't know him at all. Probably would never get invited on his show. He's in prison right now. Because the spirit of the age views him as that much of a threat. Steve Bannon. Why isn't your pastor in prison right now? Why isn't he? Why? While you blog and morally preen, Steve Bannon's in prison. What have you done? What have you done? Folks, I'm telling you, this is our time. This is the fight for such a time as this. You are needed. If you're in this camp, you're needed more than ever now. We need your wisdom. We need your guidance. We need your principles, but they're of no use to anybody if they're hidden under a bushel. We need your accountability. We need your discipleship. Otherwise, this thing's going to go French Revolution off the rails. I promise you. Populist revolts always do. We need you. I texted someone very high up in MAGA the other day. I said, okay, after what happened Saturday, I'm in. You know what he texted back to me? Thank you, brother. We need you. That's what he texted back to me. That's what I'm saying to you right now. We are needed. This is not the time to run away. It's the time to run to. Gentlemen, your thoughts.
You'll remember advocating for Ron DeSantis. I've said over and over again, he's right there, take him. Well, we tried, and we lost. And now Ron DeSantis, clearly, as you saw on TV just a couple of nights ago, readily has moved on. For my part, so am I now. but I'm going to use the exact same argument. It might not look the way we wanted to. It might not be perfect, but we have the high ground in a way we haven't had in a while. It's right there. Take it.
In the last chopper out of Nam analogy that I used the other day, is the chopper the solution to that conflict? No. But it gives you a chance at least to regroup and get out of there before things get really hot. Do I think the Republican Party and Donald Trump are necessarily, hey, that's the solution? No. But at least on the chopper, you got a shot. I think we came in within 1 inch of not having a shot at all. That's where I am.
Romans 8:28.